I'll keep an eye on that, and then we'll answer questions as we go, or at the end. We should have a little bit of time. But there's what we're going to do today. A little bit of overview as to threat protection, signature-based protections, and profiles, which we can. There are several of them, but we kind of lump them together. A little bit about WildFire, some interesting things, URL filtering, DNS security, and then we'll end with Q&A as we have time. So first, a quick little overview of content ID, of threat protection. So the idea is lots of bad stuff out there. There's payload-based threats, there's IP threats, DNS-based threats, those sort of things. Some of these are known threats. Some of them are new, zero-day, we would call them. But the idea is to clean all this up, give you a clean feed, and protect everybody. How do you initiate these protections? It's with your security policy rules. So within your security policy rules, you have the ability to create rules to allow and deny different traffic, different users, different applications, etc. When you have an allow action to say, hey, I want to let this person go out to the internet, or I want to let this application out, or this user out, or whatever the case may be, with Prisma access, it's mostly remote users and mobile users, and they're headed out to the internet. Well, you want to protect these folks. So we have security profiles that allow you to be able to allow certain traffic. The default on Prisma access is everything's denied unless you explicitly allow it. So when you allow traffic, you have the ability to add a security profile. And we have several different profile types we're going to talk about. Antivirus protection, spyware protection. We have inline machine learning, artificial intelligence, if you will, to protect you from all these things. You don't need to add these to a security policy rule with a denying action because, well, we're going to block the traffic anyway before it ever gets inspected. So do it with your allow rules. Now, one more word about that. If you were to take a rule that had a deny action and you added some sort of, say antivirus protection or WildFire Profile or something like that, is that going to break things? Nah. It just means that it won't be used. So it doesn't break anything, doesn't hurt anything, but there's no need to do any sort of security profile on allowed traffic. So we can kind of break our protections into about 4 different families. Our signature-based protections. So these would be known exploits, known viruses, known spyware, known attacks. And we'll talk about those in a moment. We have WildFire, which is for zero-day and unknown stuff we've never seen before. We have a couple of ways to protect you against those things. We have URL filtering that can protect users from hitting phishing links, even from being able to share corporate credentials and things like that. We have DNS security to block a lot of DNS-based attacks and DNS tunneling and things like that. So we'll go through all of those. First of all, with our signature-based stuff, they break down into about 6 or 8 different families. And you had the ability to create different profiles, different settings for different traffic, and the ability to add these different security profiles to your different security policy rules. Again, allow rules is typically where you want them. We're going to explain some rationale about why you might want to have different security policy rule types for different directions of traffic as we go along, but we'll be there in a moment. But you can either take these individual profiles like, hey, I've got this antivirus security profile, I got this anti-spyware profile, I got this WildFire profile, and I want to add those to my security policy rules. And you could add the different protections individually. You also have the ability to group those together in a security profile group, and you have the ability to add those to different rules. We're going to follow that logic along here in just a moment, but just to make sure everybody's clear, security policy rule says allow or deny, has an action. Security policy profile allows us to inspect that traffic to do content inspection and threat protections. Now, several different signature-based protections, right? This is for known stuff. This is for stuff that's out there that people know about. This is not for your brand new emerging zero-day threats. And again, the idea is to add these profiles to your security policy rules and have allow actions. This is an example of a security profile added to a security policy rule. So if you look at this, we have our security policy rule, and it says, hey, I want to allow this application or these users or that sort of thing, based upon sources and destinations and applications and URL categories, etc. But we have the action, which is, in this case, an allow action. That's normally where you would add a security profile. And we have all of our different families of those. Antivirus, vulnerability protection, anti-spyware, URL filtering, file blocking, data filtering, WildFire, as well as a couple of other ones we're going to talk about. You can add those individually, or you have the ability to group together a bunch of predefined ones and have those grouped together into a anti-threat protection group. If you look at this picture here, and you look at the different antivirus profiles and all those, these are labeled as outbound. The directionality of traffic is actually important. And with Prisma Access, you're normally looking at outbound traffic, users going out to the internet, whether they're mobile users or in a remote network in a branch office, or the traffic is east and west traffic. It is a mobile user talking to somebody in the office, or somebody in the office talking to a mobile user, that sort of thing. So it's internal traffic, what we would call east-west traffic. So there are best practices for different traffic streams, and we're going to talk about those. But first of all, let's talk about the different protection types we have. We have antivirus. All of these, by the way, have default pre-built profiles that you can use. There may be the opportunity or the requirement that you amend these or that you customize these. And we actually have some best practice guidance for helping you do this. One of them is breaking traffic into these three categories that I talked about: inbound, outbound, and east-west or internal traffic. And we have some suggestions for default settings on these, but out of the box, without you even configuring anything, there are default profiles for all of these that I'm going to talk about. So Antivirus Profile protects you from quite a lot of different protocols that we can decode: HTTP and POP and SMTP, et cetera, et cetera. I'll read the slide to you, but you get the idea. We do have the ability to also create packet captures. And whenever we see a positive, we can go ahead and take packet captures. What does this do for you? Well, it allows you to do a few things. For forensic analysis, it allows you to see what the attack is doing, what sort of virus this was, etc. We also have the ability, or that also gives you the ability to check things out and make sure you're don't have a false positive. There's a signature action in the second column here, and it has default values. Sometimes you get a customer, or you may be a customer, and you may have some concerns about using any of our threat protections. You may be worried that we're going to break something. One of the things you can do is set that signature action to alert, which means we're not going to stop anything, but we're going to log any sort of positives that we see. And then you can use things like the packet captures and the logs and things like that to satisfy yourself as to whether this is a false positive or a true positive. So even if you're squeamish about adding this stuff, you can do it changing the action from a block or a reset or whatever the default action is to just a log. So alert is the logging function. If you hit allow as an action, we're not going to log it, but alert will alert you. It'll log it. We also have spyware profiles to protect you for spyware, keyloggers, backdoors, things like that. One of the cool things about our anti-spyware profile is our DNS Sinkhole function. So we have a constantly updated and feeding link that is fed into Prisma Access, and your on-premise firewalls, where we have a domain list of different domains of known bad sites, known phishing sites, and known virus sites, and known things like that, spyware stuff, that is updated in real time by our threat intelligence group and our threat intelligence stuff that we get from WildFire and from our threat intelligence hunting group, Unit 42. Great folks. Have a great Twitter feed. They have a great link on our site if you're interested in the what's going on out there with the with threats these days and what's the newest stuff. Man, they're great to follow. But in any case, if a host is infected with some sort of malware, and they typically what they would try to do is just make a call out to a site where an attacker sits and allow the attacker to make a reverse, open a reverse shell and start manipulating things and making lateral moves, stealing information, stealing customer information, stuff like that. This prevents that. What we do is with DNS Sinkhole is we have a affected user. They try to do DNS resolution to a site, and we basically feed them disinformation. We say, you know what, instead of actually being able to resolve that site, we're going to give you a fake address. We have a address that's pre-filled in, or you can use your own. What this allows us to do is find the infected host. A lot of times, the problem with infected users that are doing these command and control connections is that they're resolving through a DNS server, and it looks like the DNS server is the culprit here. The DNS server is infected. It's really a user behind the DNS server. This helps us find that user. It's pretty cool stuff. We have vulnerability protection profiles that are protect different operating systems, different servers, different networking equipment from different known vulnerabilities. Again, all of these have default out-of-the-box profiles you can use, or the ability to customize it. URL filtering for your users going out to the internet. And the vast majority of your traffic with mobile users and remote network users with Prisma access, they're going out to the internet. This is very important, and this is included with your subscriptions. As long as you have one of the subscriptions that has threat protections, URL filtering is part of that. With our on-prem firewalls, it's an extra buy-in, but it's included with the threat stuff with Prisma access. We have several dozen different categories that we can categorize billions of different websites throughout the world. And we have the ability to be able to block, allow, or alert on these different website types. There's even a couple of other interesting actions we have. There's this continue action. Well, what continue does is it allows us to be able to initially block a site and say, hey, we don't think you should be going to this site, but if you want to, click here and we'll let you go. And then we record who did that. And the override is the same idea, except for it involves a password that a user would have to provide. File blocking can block the upload or download of different file types, right? So great for malware protection. Great for protecting users from downloading file types that may be dangerous. If you change the extension on a file type or something like that, it doesn't fool us. We understand what it is. We have the ability to be able to unzip files and stuff like that to several different layers. Data filtering allows you to block or record different patterns, data patterns. We have quite a few pre-configured ones, you know, like credit card numbers, social security numbers, etc., and other different identity numbers throughout the world. Besides just the social security numbers, which is, you know, here in the US. But you have the ability to create your own custom patterns. if I had if I wanted to block account numbers, and my company uses account numbers that are 6 digits long, and I'll start with a 6 or a 7 or something, I can write a regular expression to cover that. If I wanted to block any sort of file that contained the word confidential or something like that, I can do that. So I can use my data filtering profiles to do that. And we got WildFire. So WildFire is really cool stuff. And again, all these things have default profiles. So you don't want to think about building them yourself. We got default ones. But WildFire is very interesting. The only thing to really think about with WildFire when it comes to Prisma Access is, unless you are allowing inbound traffic from the internet to your users, maybe because they're hosting a website or something like that, which is pretty uncommon with Prisma Access, then you don't have to really worry about inbound traffic rules or inbound protections. If you have traffic coming into a DMZ or you're hosting a site or something like that, well, that's different. Typically, your users with Prisma Access are going out. They're going out to the internet. They're either remote users or mobile users. So checking the URL or checking the files that may be uploading or downloading or looking at, or any sort of unknown URLs and stuff like that is pretty important. And this is what WildFire can do for you. Also, traffic between remote network sites, or between mobile users and remote networks, or mobile user to mobile user, that sort of stuff. That can be important also. And again, writing security profiles for directional traffic is a great idea, because at least there are subtle differences, stuff you want to think about for your users leaving the network versus staying internally, for viruses or file types or things like that could be different. So the context matters, the direction of traffic matters. And again, we have documentation available. If you look up security profiles or threat protections, we have some things to guide you. Now, these are based on our physical on-prem firewalls, but they're applicable to Prisma Access also. The idea is you basically break down all of your traffic as either being inbound, outbound, or internal, north, east-west traffic, as we would call it. And you create different profiles for each type. Again, for Prisma Access inbound, probably not a big player. A little bit about WildFire. What does it actually do, and how does it do it? The idea is that any sort of firewall, Prisma Access, any user, anybody using some of our other products like XDR and stuff like that, we can send any sort of file that's unknown, and it's like, we don't know whether this is good or bad, to WildFire and take a look at it. We can actually query WildFire. We can query locally on the box or on the device or in the cloud to see, what do we think of this? And if there's already a verdict that exists, we can tell you, yeah, it's good or bad. We have the ability to do incident analysis on PanOS, on Prisma Access, actually on XDR, on premise firewalls, to make an instant decision without even reaching out. And if something is an unknown quantity, we have the ability to send it to WildFire for analysis. We use both static analysis, so like artificial intelligence. We also use dynamic analysis, where we actually take these files and execute them and put them on bare metal servers and stuff like that, and see whether they're good or bad. WildFire will give us a verdict, and the verdict's either going to say it's benign. In other words, hey, it's okay, it's safe, don't worry about it. Grayware, I'll come to that in a moment. Malware, the third one there. Bad stuff, we're going to block it. So if it's malware, we're going to block it. Additionally, we will write a signature to block that, because now it's no longer unknown, it's something known. It's still 0 day, but we know about it. Everybody that has the WildFire subscription gets that signature the next time they download antivirus signatures, which with WildFire these days can be a constant feed. That's what I would tell you to do. Back when I started with the company, it was like once a day. Now it's constant, so do constant. Phishing. So one of the other cool things we can do is we can look at email links for emails that are received and things like that. Test the links, see if it's some sort of a phishing site. You know, let's say it's an email that says, "Hey, you got a delivery down at the shipping dock. You know, log in here and we'll send you the package." And that's for your username and password for work. We can test that link and make sure it's not, you know, a phishing attempt. And if it is, we can block it. We can block it with our URL filtering, which again, if you get the threat protection, is part of the base threat protection with Prisma access, as well as WildFire. Those are extra on your on-prem firewalls. So back to grayware. Grayware means that it's not a security threat, but things like adware and spyware and browser helper objects and things like that are identified. We don't block those with our antivirus profiles. Want to block that stuff? Spyware profiles. That's where you block it. We have the ability to do inline real-time WildFire analysis. This is relatively new. If you got some old on-premise firewalls that hadn't updated in a couple of years, update them and you'll get this functionality. It's also available with Prisma Access. We have the ability in real time under your antivirus profiles, if you go to the WildFire inline ML machine learning, to instantly categorize unknown files, to give you a real-time verdict. Now, this means that if we see a file that appears to be malware, we block it. We still send it to WildFire for complete analysis, but we block the user from downloading it if it appears to be real time, if it appears to be malware in real time. This gives you the ability to get real-time protection for possible malware. Historically, just FYI, we didn't have this functionality all the time. It used to be that basically we'd allow a user to download a file, we'd buffer it, send it to WildFire for analysis, and in the meantime, patient 0 gets infected. Now we can block this stuff before it ever gets downloaded. And then, as I said, we can continue to send it for analysis and figure out whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. URL filtering gives us the ability to look at users going out to different websites. We categorize them into multiple different categories, and we have the ability to do some of these actions I talked about earlier, allow traffic to a certain site, like, hey, I want to allow people to go to banking websites or online shopping or whatever. Alert, which means don't block people, but record this for me. There are some different categories that you don't necessarily want to block, but you want to know what's going on. Or maybe you're deploying this brand new and you have no idea what sort of categories you want to allow or block. Well, alert on everything. Then you can kind of look through this stuff and figure out what to do. Have the ability to block someone from going to a different category, or this could also be custom categories with individual websites on them that you create, but we have our pre-created ones. We block the site and we put up a page that says, hey, you've been blocked, buddy. We have continue and override. Continue, we will put up a block page with a little note saying, hey, we don't think you should be going to this website. If you want to continue, click the continue button. And then we, let you through, but we do log it. And then override, same thing, except we require a password, and you can create passwords for people to use. You want to make sure that all your outbound security policy rules, which is going to be the vast majority of what you got with Prisma Access, that they have URL filtering, because most of your users are going out to the internet. Most of your mobile users, most of your remote users are headed that way. There are several categories that we suggest strongly that you block. Some of these are written in orange with a white lettering, and some with black lettering. The black lettering ones are the ones that we block by default with our default profile. The ones with the white color are ones we say you should, but we don't block them by default, but you should. If you're looking for guidance on how do I need to configure this, configure this on outbound rules with an outbound URL filtering profile, block all these different sites, all these different categories of sites. Initially, you can learn on everything else so that you kind of get an idea as to where everybody's going and what they're doing, and maybe you have other stuff you'd like to block. Maybe one company wants to block users from going to online dating websites during work hours. Maybe another company doesn't care. Those sort of things. So these can be easily customized. And also, just log calendar page only is our advice to you, our best practice. Otherwise, you get all the ad banners and things like that we log. It takes up a lot of room with your logs. And you have to buy these subscriptions to Cortex Data Lake, which is based on the number of logs per second and overall log size, overall log storage and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff's probably not interesting to you, and it just takes up room. So get rid of the clutter. As I mentioned, we can block email links. This is more useful in on-premise firewalls than is in Prisma Access, but we have the ability to, if a user receives an email, we have the ability to research the links and see if any embedded links are phishing sites and stuff like that. We can then update those links to PanDB, which has among its different categories, one is phishing. And if you block phishing sites, phishing links, hey, anything brand new is going to be blocked too. Last thing I want to talk about is DNS security. So DNS security is a is actually an additional subscription when it comes to Prisma Access. The idea is that there's lots of attacks out there. DNS Security is going to predict and stop malicious domains, automated attacks, leverages machine learning, protects against different emerging DNS-based attacks like the ultra-slow DNS tunneling, dangling DNS, DNS rebinding, stuff like that. We got some papers that Unit 42 has released that talk about how malware uses DNS for command and control and data theft, DNS tunneling, things like that, like the oil rig attack and things like that use this. So this is not just some little side ancillary thing. DNS security is a real thing and a big thing these days. We have a cloud-based solution, much like we do with WildFire, that allows us to do automated enforcement. Basically, the way it works is if an infected client goes out to a DNS server, we can do a local lookup, but if it's something that's not been resolved, we can send that to our DNS security cloud, much like we do with files for WildFire, and go, hey, you know what? Never heard of this domain. What do you think? So this is sort of like our spyware protection with our Sinkhole, but this is real time. And we can get a result back, a response, and we can block that resolution so the infected client can't make that up on call. So therefore, they can't do DNS tunneling. They can't do any of those sort of things that people try to do with DNS based attacks. This is an additional subscription, but it is pretty important and something you should give some thought about. Everything else I talked about, antivirus, anti-spyware, WildFire, file upload and download, et cetera, those are all part of the basic threat licensing with Prisma Access. So we've got a few minutes left.